Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Our guest today is Kelly Mackin, author of Work Life Well Lived and co founder and CEO of the Motives Met platform, which empowers people to create their best work life and workplace. Kelly developed a new approach around what well-being at work is all about, how to get there, and why it's so important that we do get there. And has done so through tools like the Human Needs Assessment, which shows that there are 28 human needs, also known as motives, that are at the heart of health and happiness at work. Today, we are going to talk about her career change, the human needs assessment, and how to create the best work life ever. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am looking forward to our conversation today.
Oh, me too. So let's start from your background and your story. So, how did you start your professional life, or better, what was your first job?
I'd say my first kind of real job in my career, I was working in the creative agency world. So this is back when I lived in Chicago many, many years ago. And I was doing account management and research, and I was in the wild, wild west of agency life, which truly was craziness. So it was an interesting start to my career, to say the least. And I was kind of in the agency world for a few years.
And what was your dream job when you were a child?
I just wanted to be like my mom when I was a kid. I looked up to her so much. My mom was senior vice president of research at one of the largest global advertising agencies. And to me, she was just this epitome of success. So I really just wanted to be like her and to go into that agency life and be a VP one day. And I think that's kind of why I started my career there.
Hmm. And what is your educational background?
So I went to school at Wittenberg University, college, undergrad. It's a smaller liberal arts school in Ohio, so not that many people have heard of it. But I was a communications major and then a dance minor, actually.
Hmm. I thought you looked a little bit like a dancer. Do you still
Still love
dance?
to dance.
Do
Don't
you
do it as
still?
part of my career, but I still love it.
Oh, that's great. And it's
Yeah,
so good for everything, emotional well-being, physical, everything.
absolutely.
So how did you progress your career then from your first job onwards?
Well, I hit rock bottom. And that was kind of a big wake up call, both in my personal life and my work life. So I was in this agency world, and it was in particular, one company, a very toxic environment where it was normal to pull all-nighters, work every weekend, have people yelling at the office, slamming doors, screaming at one another. I mean, when I look back on it now, I'm like, that was craziness. That's insanity that I was even living in that environment every day. But it takes sometimes being out of the environment and being able to kind of have that clear picture to go, oh, wow, yeah, that was really, really unhealthy. So it started to take a real toll on me, physically, mentally, emotionally. I developed a sleep disorder. I had terrible anxiety. And it took me hitting some real lows before I woke up and just decided that I deserved well-being at work, that everybody did, that this was not sustainable. And it really put me on this track to change my whole life. I moved from Chicago out to California, pursued well being in my personal and professional life, and then started to really help people, work towards well being in their lives.
Hmm. So you had a career change, and can you describe the pivotal moment in your life when you started to think about creating the Motives Med platform and wanted to make it the focus of your career?
Yeah, it was about 2017 when we first started on this journey. So I had at that point really dove deep into human behavior research because I'm a researcher at heart. So was my mom. So I'd kind of gone on that path. I had become a cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner, a mind management coach, helping people deal with stress and burnout, and a meditation teacher and mindfulness. So I was kind of in this well-being world already. But then I was so thrilled and shocked, but thrilled that people were talking about work well-being, that it had become this really kind of hot topic of conversation. And this was even before the pandemic in
Mm.
2017. And my mom and I, who's one of the other co-founders of Motives Met, we went, wow, we're so grateful that this conversation is happening, but then why is stuff so bad? Why is stress and burnout so high? Why is retention so low? Why are people so unhappy at work, even though now we're actually talking about well-being at work and we have all this wellness tech, right? We have all these thought leaders and CEOs even supporting it. So clearly we went, we're missing the mark somewhere. We're getting this wrong. And that really just began our first step on our research journey, was to go, well, what even really is work well-being, right? Like, what does it even mean to really be happy and healthy at work? And so the research curiosity in us just led us to start doing some quantitative research. And we never could have guessed that it would have led to a whole platform and an assessment tool and a book. But that was kind of that first shift into like, oh, this is going to be a focus of my career now.
Mm. And during your transition from one career to the other, did you have to face any challenges?
Oh, so many, so many challenges. One of them being fear and doubt, huge one, because I was leaving the success of really two careers behind to go all in on Motives Met. And that was very scary. It's when you're leaving the unknown and going out of your comfort zone in that way, which so many people experience when they're doing a career change. That's going to be something that you're really going to have to work through. And I didn't want that to hold me back, but it was absolutely something I needed, was to go, how am I going to create a sense of security for myself during the difficulties of this transition? And so that was a big part of my journey.
Mm. And I was thinking also about what you said earlier about talking about well-being at work. And that's one of the points that majority of career changes, they actually reach many times that point where they feel so unhappy at work. That's one of the reasons why then they look for something new and explore new avenues. So it's very important. And so let's talk about that. How can we create our best work life and our best workplace? Even if not everything is dependent on us. But you've done this amazing research and you have identified that there are 28 human needs that you also call motives that are at the heart of health and happiness at work. What are these 28 human needs or motives?
So these 28 needs fall into these 10 overarching buckets, or motive domains, as we call them. And we developed this really great framework that's colored, and it makes it really easy to grasp these 28 needs. You can see it on our website at motivesmet.com. We post it a lot on social media. And what this framework does is it really helps to kind of organize all of the information in the world that gets thrown at us all the time around what we should focus on at work. Because that was really a huge obstacle we found when we were researching, of like, wow, there's so much noise out there, whether it's from social media influencers or different books or research that's saying this is most important. Oh, autonomy leads to greater work happiness, but so does variety. Oh, wait, people are unhappy and leave their jobs because they don't have growth opportunities or they don't have flexibility. But then another research study says, no, it's all about belonging and community. So if we're trying to be happy at work and we want to help the people around us be happy, what are we supposed to do with all of that, right? It doesn't really help us when it's so kind of messy and scattered and confusing. So that was kind of the first piece, is identifying there are 28 of these needs and then getting it in a framework that could really help us digest these needs and then put them into practice in our work life. So, for example, in the meaning domain, we have the passion and purpose motives. In the freedom domain, we have autonomy, flexibility, and free expression, which is kind of all around the need for psychological safety at work and wanting your needs to be heard and the needs of others to be heard. There's work-life harmony as a motive, growth, peer connection, fun. And that's a motive that often would get overlooked. Some people really need to have fun in their jobs, in what they do every day to be healthy and happy at work. But that's a motive that can kind of get dismissed. Challenge is another motive that sometimes we just don't pay attention to as much, but it can be really important for someone else. So that's kind of real high level what these 28 motives are and kind of how they came to be.
So how can we get these needs fulfilled?
Well, that's a big question. It's a big question. First piece is I always say I will break the ugly truth of work well-being to you, that all of these 28 needs are not going to be thriving at the same time. We call it the attainable dream of a work life well lived for a reason. Certain needs hold friction with one another. So our data place the needs around this circular framework. It's kind of like a wheel, if you can picture that, very strategically. So motives that are closer together have more in common. It's easier to meet them at the same time. Needs that are across from one another, for example, can hold more friction. So for example, someone I coached really was driven by the need for work-life harmony and also really driven by the need for future success. They are both on opposite ends of our framework for a reason. They can absolutely hold friction with one another. So it is not about perfection. It's about optimization. There's going to need to be compromise. There's going to need to be strategy and sometimes tough decisions. But one of the greatest insights coming out of our research that's absolutely pivotal is that we don't need these things to the same degree in the same way at the same time. So what you need most to thrive at work is going to be different than what I need most. We all have a different hierarchy of needs. So different motives are going to rise to the top in this present season of our work life in terms of what's most important to us, what's most influential to us. And what we discovered is when people can get their top 5 motives met, that's what we call well-being at work. So that's what led us to develop the human needs assessment, where you could take this assessment and really figure out, what are my top 5 motives? What are those human needs really driving me? Because if I only have so many resources, attention, dollars, right? Time, how am I going to make the best decisions in my work life? How am I going to make the best decisions for what job I want to go into next? I need a compass to really help me do that, because if everything's a priority, nothing is a priority.
So what happens instead when some of these needs, I mean, for what you say now, some of them, they're not going to be met, but if too many of them are not met, so what happens in our work life, or how do we feel in our workplace?
Well, one of the things that's really important to come back to is the reason that we want these needs met is because it all really underneath comes down to how we want to feel at work and how we don't want to feel. So we are all human beings with these human needs. And if these needs are met, we are going to feel proud, connected, engaged, inspired, all these things we want to feel at work. And if they're not met, we'll feel burnt out or stressed or bored or frustrated. So it's important to kind of understand the driver behind wanting to get these motives met and really be able to look at each of those individual needs that are rising to the top for you, but also take a step back and look at them holistically. Again, like look at their relationship with one another. For example, when you asked me, hey, when you were on this new career path, where did you struggle or how did you struggle? Security was a top need for me. And the first time I took the motives met assessment, I saw security as a top motive. And that felt like a slap in the face because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a risk taker. I'm an adventurous soul. And it was like, oh my God, I need security. I don't have any of that right now. And that was why it was rising to the top for me. It was a very weak need and it needed my attention. But I also needed to look at my relationship with security and my other top needs, which were future success and achievement. So I was able to go, hey, here's the deal. I don't need security to be extremely strong. I just don't need it to be so weak that it holds me back from going after my big ambitions.
Yeah.
Because if I feel super secure and comfy, I'm probably not doing the things I need to do to reach these big goals and ambitions and dreams I have.
Mm.
So when you're thinking about your needs, you need to look at them holistically, because a lot of times this is what I've seen too with people who've taken our assessment, as many times when people are doing a career change. They'll go, I want to go find something I'm really passionate about, that I really feel drives meaning in my work life. And they'll maybe switch into a career field or new industry that they do feel is more meaningful, but their other four motives aren't met, and it's not enough. So you might be driven by purpose, and you could be in a job where you feel there's a lot of purpose, but if your other four needs, let's say they're growth, peer connection, work-life harmony, appreciation, if those things aren't met, you're not going to be thriving at work the way you want to be. So just understanding that these things have to work synergistically and looking at them holistically is really important.
So what action can we take if we realize that our needs are not met in our working place or in our present careers?
It's really important for you to have a well-being action plan and really develop that, even if you feel pretty content in your work life, because we also say prevention is better than cure. Like you're saying, we wait sometimes until we're so miserable at work, we're so unhappy, things are not going well, to finally make a change and take action. And instead, we can kind of be proactive and be looking at our needs and constantly having a well-being action plan we're following. That puts us in the driver's seat to have well-being in our work life. And so we say with an action plan, there's a few different areas you want to think about. A big one that can get overlooked is mindset. And again, my security motive is a really good example of that. What are the thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes you have around some of these needs at work that are serving you and aren't serving you? And where do you need to change that? Then there's going to be big actions and small actions. Sometimes it's the micro habits. It's the little to-dos. It's the tiny changes that compounded over time can make a big difference or can just elevate a motive in your work life. But you also have to sit there and be willing to make the big changes. You have to be willing to dream big and let your mind expand and sit there and go, in an ideal world, how would I get this need met? What would this look like? Because that sounds like a simple thing, but so often we never take the time to sit down and do that. Along with the to-dos are also the to-don'ts. What are you no longer going to do? What are the boundaries that you need to have in place so that you can honor and protect these top needs for you at work? And then there's the support. Who can help you elevate these needs at work? Whether it's different mentors or consultants or experts out there, or just colleagues, peers, leaders, who do you need to ask for help? Who do you need to make aware of your motives? And just as important, who are the non-supporters? Who do you need to go have a courageous conversation with, perhaps, to go, hey, this isn't working. I don't feel included and like I belong here because this is how you're treating me in team meetings. And that's top of mind because someone was just sharing this story with me last week. So that's a big part. Another part is celebrating what's going right. We tend to focus on the negative. That's how our brains are wired. And a lot of us have come to understand this. And while absolutely we want to look for weaknesses around these motives, part of wanting to feel good, to feel happy at work, is noticing all the stuff that's going right too. So celebrate when stuff is good, feel grateful for it, and let other people know how they support your motives. So those are just kind of a few parts of developing a well-being action plan. And I really go into detail of how to do it in the book. But you want to go through each of your motives and kind of go through those different sections. And then when you do that and you bring it all together, you really have a robust framework and you feel empowered to take action in a way that you haven't before.
So between the 10 motives domains, so success, significance, personal connection, comfort, I'm gonna read them all: balance, freedom, stimulation, advancement, meaning, and company connection. Which is, in your experience, the most difficult to fulfill or to find in our working life?
That's such a good question. And I feel like my answer is not that exciting in the sense it's so unique based on the individual. And that's something we just keep coming back to with our research is how personal
Mm.
well-being is. And that is what makes it difficult. But when we embrace that truth, again, we're sitting in a much more empowered place than kind of going, oh, this podcaster said I should go just focus on these two things. So I'm going to do that. Or this thought leader or YouTube person said, this is what I should go do. It's sure saying, hey, there can be value to all that information, but I need to figure out what's true for me. I need to take this advice and information and be able to apply it to myself in a personalized way.
Mm. So you mentioned before that you have been focusing on research for a long time. How have you identified these 10 motives domains?
Well, we started out looking at all sorts of things. We didn't even just focus on human needs. We looked at benchmarks like stress, we looked at burnout, we looked at emotions, we looked at attitude statements. And what really just became clear from the data is that these needs were at the heart of everything. And it plays off a little bit of what I was talking about earlier, because if it's when these needs are met or not met that we experience that stress and burnout, that we experience those emotions we want to feel or don't want to feel. And it becomes a way that allows us to have a definition around work well-being that applies for everybody, but at the same time allows for that personalization. Like I was just talking about, that's so important. So we're able to say, well-being at work is when these top motives are met, but those top motives are going to be different for everybody.
Mm.
And that was really important in the research, is what was true for some people at times wasn't true for others. And so it was really difficult from a data perspective to figure out, how do we define well-being at work in a way that truly is applicable to everybody, but allows for individualized consideration at the same time. And that's really what we saw come through with the motives. And we did multiple R&D studies. We looked at like hundreds and hundreds of statements as it relates to these different needs to really get down to the final statements that would be in the algorithm in our assessment tool.
Mm. So we often forget how each of us, with our choices, can have a positive impact in the world. How do you feel you're making the world a better place?
I really hope I'm making an impact on the work well-being movement. I mean, that is my goal. That is my mission, is to create a work world where we're human first, where ill-being is a thing of the past, because I truly do believe that we are at this point in time where it's possible in a way it's never been, that people are really paying attention, that the pandemic fueled fire to the work well-being movement that was already underway. And so by having all this research, I am hoping that we can really shift and make a bigger impact now than we ever have before.
Hope that too. So we're reaching the end of this episode, but we have a few more questions. So first of all, what advice would you give to anyone who feels their needs are not met in their present circumstances?
Really important thing I would say is that it's not sustainable. Having your needs met at work is not sustainable. And again, it's not going to be perfect all the time. And there's going to be moments of career transitions that are tough. And there are going to be times where 4 of your needs are well met, maybe one isn't, and you're going to have to kind of accept that. But so often people kind of just hope for things to change and get better without stepping up and taking that action. And they think that they can kind of deal with this ill-being in their work lives, this burnout, this stress, this unhappiness, but it will always end up eating away at you. And I identified 10 dream killers, as I call them, that threaten the dream of a work life well lived. And in the book, I go into detail of these dream killers. But the last dream killer is that well-being at work does not get prioritized enough. And the reason I put it last on purpose is because even if you believe in work well-being, even if you're an advocate, even if you say, yes, I deserve health and happiness, there are so many things that are going to want to get in the way. So many things, from personal things to work things to old belief systems around, I have to be the last one in the office, right? Or I have to prove myself, or, hey, I'm the breadwinner of my family and I have a good job, I should just be happy. I hear so many things from people all the time that really hold them back from prioritizing their well-being. So I think, I mean, when it comes down to it, the most important piece of advice is if your needs aren't met, you need to make a change. You need to develop a well-being action plan because you deserve that health and happiness at work.
Hmm. So before we reach the end of this episode, we have the last questions. If anyone would like to reach out to you and get in contact, how and where they can find you?
Well, our website is motivesmet.com, and I'm very active on LinkedIn, Kelly Mackin, as well as Instagram. And my Instagram information is KellyMackin_motivesmet.
Great, thank you. So the last question that we ask to all of our guests, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
Such a good question. And I think for me, it would be, you need to be your future self now, today. The concept of the future self has become so motivating and so powerful for me. And future success is still today one of my top motives, my top drivers for my well-being at work. And I would also probably say outside of work. But when I was younger, I don't think I held the right mindset. I kind of thought, hey, you know, I do all the things and everything, then I can just become this person that I want to be. And it's like, things don't fall in your lap. You have to do those things now. You have to show up as your future self today to get the life that you want tomorrow. And so really pushing yourself to show up as that person today. How do they think? How do they feel? How do they act? What do they do? What don't they do? That's how you get to where you want to go in life. And if I could rewind time, I would really drive that point home.
I love that. Well, thank you, Kelly, so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational career story and wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. And the last message for our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.